I was teaching 8th grade biology in Tacoma when my brother died on the moon. The official report said equipment malfunction, standard mining accident, decompression in Sector 7. Tyler Bridger, aged 34, survived by one brother and a mortgage on a condo in Bellingham he'd never even slept in. The company, Helios Lunar Resources, sent a grief counsellor and a severance check that cleared 6 figures. They paid out fast, too fast. That should have been my first warning. I took the money, quit my job, spent 3 weeks in my apartment drinking bottom-shelf whiskey and watching Tyler's old video messages on repeat. He'd sent me probably 50 over the 2 years he worked up there. Stupid stuff mostly. Him showing off the view of Earth through the HAB module windows. Complaining about the freeze-dried food. This one recording where he juggled moon rocks in the low gravity while laughing like an idiot. The last message came through on February 13th, 2045, one day before the accident. He wasn't laughing in that one. "Nate," he'd said, and his face looked wrong. Pale. Eyes too wide. "If something happens to me, if I don't make it back, don't believe what they tell you." The video cut off there. 15 seconds total. I must have watched it 200 times, trying to read meaning into every pixel, every breath, every micro-expression. Don't believe what they tell you. What the hell did that mean? I started digging. Turns out, Tyler wasn't the only one who died on February 14th. 3 miners went down when their drill punched through something hollow 17 miles deep. Tyler Bridger, Amit Okoye, and Jay Kim. Drill operator, surveyor, and structural engineer. The company said they fell into a sinkhole, natural lunar formation. Tragic but explainable. Except lunar sinkholes don't have walls. I found that detail buried in a deleted forum post from someone claiming to be a Helios contractor. The post had been up for maybe 6 hours before it vanished, but archive sites never forget. According to this guy, the rescue team sent down after the collapse found the 3 miners dead at the bottom of a chamber. Not a cave, not a lava tube. A chamber. With walls. Carved walls. The post included a photo, grainy, taken from someone's phone screen. It showed what looked like a helmet cam feed, dark rock surface lit by harsh LED beams. And there, unmistakable even through the blur, symbols, markings, deliberate patterns carved into stone. The company killed the story within hours, paid off everyone involved, shut down the entire mining sector for safety inspections. When they reopened 3 months later, they said they'd found nothing unusual, just unstable geology. Tragedy averted through updated protocols. But I knew Tyler. He wasn't the type to send cryptic warnings about nothing. So I did something stupid. Something that would have made my brother call me a dumbass while secretly being proud. I used his severance money to buy answers, and what I found made me wish I'd stayed ignorant. The man I paid to talk was named Vincent Ruiz, and he met me in a bar in Houston that smelled like industrial cleaner and stale beer. Former Helios communications tech, 6 months sober, according to the chip on his keychain. He had the look of someone who'd seen something that changed the shape of his sleep. "You're Tyler's brother," he said when I sat down, not a question. "How'd you know?" "You have his jaw. Same way of holding your shoulders." He stirred his ginger ale with a cocktail straw. "I'm sorry about what happened. Tyler was decent. Didn't treat us ground crew like dirt." I slid an envelope across the table. 5,000 in cash. "Tell me what really happened on February 14th. Vincent stared at the envelope like it might bite him. "You know Helios has ND, as that could bury me, right? Legal teams that cost more than my house." "I know. I also know you've been trying to leak information on 3 different forums under different usernames. You're not as anonymous as you think." His eyes went sharp, calculating. Then he took the envelope and tucked it inside his jacket. "The drill team hit something at 0600 hours lunar time," he said, voice dropping. 17 miles down in Sector 7, like the report said. But it wasn't a sinkhole. The drill punched through into empty space, big empty space. Their equipment registered a cavity at least 300 meters across. A cave? If it was a cave, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Vincent leaned closer. The drill operator, that was your brother, he reported the breach immediately. Standard protocol. But then the surveyor, Okoye, he was monitoring the seismic readings, said the cavity had walls. Smooth walls. Too smooth for natural formation. What did they do? Tyler wanted to pull out and wait for the engineering assessment. Smart call. But Kim, the structural guy, he was ambitious. Wanted to document it first, get his name on the discovery. Vincent's jaw worked. They went down. All three of them. Used the drill shaft as an access point with climbing gear. And for about 20 minutes, everything was fine. Their helmet cams showed rock walls with these markings. At first, the command center thought it was just natural mineral deposits. Patterns can look intentional when they're not. But then Tyler's camera caught a clear shot. Vincent pulled out his phone. His hand shook slightly as he swiped through photos. He stopped on one and turned the screen toward me. The image was dark, illuminated by harsh white LED beams. Carved into lunar bedrock were symbols, spirals, angular shapes, something that looked almost like writing. But what made my breath catch was how deliberate they looked, how intentional. Tyler sent this back to command and asked what the protocol was for archaeological finds. Can you imagine? Archaeological finds on the moon. Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. 10 minutes later, every single feed cut out, emergency channel went dead. Command sent the rescue team down immediately. What did they find? Vincent pocketed his phone. That's where my clearance ended. I was in the communications hub monitoring transmissions. The rescue team went silent for 40 minutes. Total radio blackout. When they finally came back up. He paused, rubbing his face. 3 body bags. That's it. Command locked down the entire sector within the hour. How did they die? Officially? Decompression. But I heard the rescue team leader talking to medical before they scrubbed the records. He said there was no suit breach, no air loss. The 3 of them just stopped, like someone flipped a switch. The bar suddenly felt too warm, too close. What do you mean stopped? Their hearts gave out simultaneously. All 3 at once. Medical said it looked like extreme shock, like they'd seen something that literally scared them to death. Vincent met my eyes. But here's the thing that kept me awake for months. The rescue team found something else down there, in the chamber. Command sealed those files so tight I only heard pieces. Whispers, second-hand accounts from people who got pulled into the debriefing. What did they find? Something that didn't belong. Something human. He said the word like it tasted wrong. I don't have details. But whatever it was, it made NASA evacuate the entire base for 2 weeks. Not just Sector 7. The whole installation. They brought in people I'd never seen before. Civilians with Department of Defense badges. When the regular crew came back, half the original staff had been reassigned to Earth positions. I thought about Tyler's last message. Don't believe what they tell you. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Vincent stood up, leaving his ginger ale half finished. Because Tyler tried to tell someone. He sent 3 messages to a geology professor at MIT, someone he knew from college. Messages about what he'd seen down there before the feeds cut. But the professor never got them. They were intercepted, deleted at the source. He zipped his jacket. Your brother knew something was wrong. He tried to warn people. And then he ended up dead with the other 2, and Helios buried the whole thing under paperwork and payouts. Where do I go from here? You don't. You take your brother's severance and you forget this conversation ever happened. Vincent headed toward the door, then paused. But if you're as stubborn as Tyler was, there's a cargo supervisor named Leo Hatch, works at the Johnson Space Center. He handled the transport when they brought the bodies down. He saw things in those containers that didn't match the official inventory. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with a napkin that had a phone number scribbled on it and the growing certainty that my brother hadn't died in any accident. He'd discovered something that needed to stay buried 17 miles beneath lunar dust, and someone had killed him for it. Leo Hatch agreed to meet me in a parking garage at Johnson Space Center at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Not inside any building, not anywhere with cameras, just level 3 of a concrete structure that smelled like motor oil and rain. He was waiting by a pickup truck when I arrived, wearing cargo pants and an Astros cap pulled low. Older than I expected, maybe mid-50s, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of shift work. He didn't offer his hand. "Vincent said you're persistent," Leo said. "That's either brave or stupid. I just want to know what happened to my brother." "Your brother died because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's the truth. Everything else is just details that'll wreck your life." He pulled out a cigarette but didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. "I'm 60 days from retirement. Full pension. I shouldn't be here." "Then why are you—" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because I've got 2 daughters. If something happened to one of them and someone knew the truth, I'd want them to tell me. Even if it hurt." He finally lit the cigarette. "What did Vincent tell you?" "That you handled the transport containers when they brought the bodies back from the moon. That the inventory didn't match." "Inventory?" Leo laughed bitterly. "That's a nice word for it. Yeah, we had 3 body bags on the manifest. Tyler Bridger, Amit Okoye, Jay Kim, routine retrieval, tragic accident. I've processed maybe 40 body returns over the years. This one was different from the start." "How?" "First, the containers came in on a priority shuttle, not standard cargo. Second, they were sealed with biohazard protocols. Moon dust is a contamination risk, sure, but we've never used level 4 containment for mining accidents. Third," he took a long drag. "Third, there were 4 containers, not 3. The parking garage suddenly felt colder. 4 temperature-controlled transport units, each one big enough for a body. I signed for 3 on the manifest, but I physically received 4. When I flagged the discrepancy, my supervisor told me to shut up and process what I was given. So I did. Logged 3, moved 4. What was in the 4th container? I don't know. I wasn't allowed to open any of them. Medical team took custody immediately. People I'd never seen before, not our usual staff." He flicked ash onto the concrete. "But containers have weight sensors. Transport protocol requires weight logging for safety calculations. The 3 listed bodies. Weights were all within expected range for adult males in suits. The 4th container. How much? 82 pounds. Whatever was in there was small, child-sized." Leo's jaw tightened. "Or maybe it was just parts. Pieces of something. I don't know. But it came from that chamber 17 miles down, and it wasn't on any official paperwork." My mouth had gone dry. "Did you see anything else? Hear anything?" The medical team worked in one of the isolated examination bays. Triple sealed, but sound carries in those buildings if you know where to stand. I was doing inventory in the adjacent storage room when I heard them talking. He paused. One of them said, "The clothing is intact. How is the clothing intact?" And another voice sounded like she was in charge. She said, "Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Just document and seal. Clothing. That's what got me. You understand? They found something down there wearing clothes, in a sealed chamber 17 miles beneath the lunar surface, something that by all logic shouldn't exist." Leo's cigarette had burned down to the filter. He dropped it and crushed it under his boot. I started paying attention after that, watching who came and went. There was a materials analysis team that processed samples from the site, rock cores, dust particles, wall fragments. Did they find anything? The head scientist, guy named Dr. Tennant from MIT, brought in special for the job. He ran isotope dating on the chamber walls, standard archaeological procedure. Results came back and he immediately requested a meeting with NASA administration. Closed door session. Whatever he found, it scared the hell out of them. What were the results? Leo shook his head. That's above my clearance. But the day after that meeting, the entire Sector 7 mine was permanently sealed. They didn't just close it down for safety review. They filled the drill shaft with concrete, all 17 miles of it. Then they built a containment dome over the entry point and declared the area off-limits indefinitely. I thought about the symbols Tyler had photographed, the carved walls. Why would they go to those lengths for a natural formation? They wouldn't. Leo pulled out his phone and glanced around the garage before showing me the screen. It was a blurry photo of a document, something he'd clearly photographed quickly without permission. I took this 2 days before I got pulled from transport duty. It's part of an internal memo. Read the highlighted section. I squinted at the text. Most of it was technical jargon about containment procedures and security protocols, but one paragraph stood out. Chamber analysis confirms artificial construction predating lunar formation by approximately 2.3 billion years. Material composition inconsistent with any known terrestrial or lunar geology. Recommendation: full information suppression under National Security Protocol 7 Alpha. Public disclosure would fundamentally compromise accepted scientific understanding of human timeline and solar system development. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Artificial construction, I said slowly. They're saying someone built that chamber before the moon existed. That's impossible, which is exactly why they buried it. You know what happens if that information goes public? Every science textbook becomes obsolete. Every theory about human evolution gets thrown out. People start asking questions nobody wants to answer. Leo pocketed his phone. Your brother didn't just discover an archaeological anomaly. He found proof that we're not the first, maybe not even the second or third. First what? Civilization, species, whatever you want to call it. Something was here before us. Something that could build chambers inside moons and carve symbols into walls that predated complex life on Earth. And whatever they were, they left something behind. I remembered Vincent's words, something human, something that didn't belong. What was in the chamber, I asked, besides the symbols? Leo was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed, softer, like he was talking about something he wished he could forget. There was a photograph, just one, leaked for maybe 6 hours before they scrubbed it from every system. I saw it on a contractor's phone before he got fired. It showed the center of the chamber, the part where Tyler and the others were found. He met my eyes. There was a chair. Modern office chair, the kind you'd buy at Staples, and sitting in that chair was a skeleton, human skeleton, wearing jeans and a jacket, and in its hand. What? A phone, smartphone. Screen was cracked, but you could still see the logo. Leo's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The skeleton was holding an iPhone, Nate, in a chamber that's older than the moon itself. The parking garage seemed to tilt. Nothing about that made sense. Nothing about any of this made sense. That's impossible, I said, but the word felt hollow. Yeah, that's what everyone said, right before they started dying. Leo straightened. 3 people saw that photograph, including the contractor who showed it to me. All 3 had accidents within a month. Car crash, house fire, allergic reaction to medication. Helios is thorough when it comes to protecting secrets. Are you saying they were killed? I'm saying I'm 2 months from retirement and I've already told you more than I should have. There's one more person you need to talk to if you want the full picture, but after that, I'm out. I've got daughters to walk down the aisle someday. He handed me a business card with a name and address written on the back. This is Dr. Tennant, the scientist who dated the chamber. He quit NASA 3 weeks after the incident. Last I heard, he was teaching at a community college in New Mexico. If anyone knows what was really down there, it's him. Why would he talk to me? Because he's been trying to talk to someone for months. NASA has him under an NDA that could put him in federal prison, but he's reaching the point where he doesn't care anymore. Leo climbed into his truck. Be careful, Nate. Your brother found something that powerful people want to stay hidden. They've already killed to protect it. They won't hesitate to do it again. He drove away, leaving me alone with a business card and the impossible image of a skeleton holding a smartphone in a chamber older than Earth's oceans. Tyler had known something was wrong. He'd tried to warn me. and now I understood why he'd looked so afraid in that last video message. Because he'd seen something that shouldn't exist, something that meant everything we knew about our place in the universe was a lie. Dr. Tennant's apartment was in Albuquerque, tucked into a complex off Central Avenue that had seen better decades. The kind of place where the pool was always empty and the parking lot had more potholes than asphalt. Not exactly where you'd expect to find a former NASA scientist. I knocked 3 times before he answered. The man who opened the door looked like he'd aged 20 years in the past few months. Gaunt face, uncombed grey hair, eyes with the hollow look of someone who'd stopped sleeping properly. He was wearing sweatpants and a stained university t-shirt. "Nate Bridger," he said, not a question. "Leo said you'd probably come. Can we talk?" He glanced past me into the parking lot, checking for other cars, then stepped aside. 5 minutes, that's all I can give you." The apartment was sparse. Futon, folding table, laptop surrounded by papers and photographs. The walls were covered in printouts, images of rock formations, mathematical equations, star charts. It looked less like a home and more like the workspace of someone obsessed. "You want coffee?" he asked, already pouring 2 cups from a pot that looked several hours old. "I want to know what you found in that chamber." Dr. Tennant handed me the cup and sat at his folding table. Up close, I could see his hands trembling slightly. "What did Leo tell you?" "That the chamber predates the moon's formation. That there was a skeleton wearing modern clothes holding a smartphone. That NASA buried everything under national security protocols." He left out the important part. Dr. Tennant pulled a file folder from under a stack of papers and opened it. Inside were photographs, clear, high-resolution images of the chamber. Not the blurry shots I'd seen before. These were professional documentation. I took these before they confiscated my equipment, smuggled the memory card out in my sock like some kind of spy movie cliché. The first photo showed the chamber from above. It was massive, roughly circular, maybe 300 meters across like Vincent had said. The walls were covered in carved symbols, intricate patterns that seemed to repeat and vary like some kind of language. The second photo showed the center of the chamber. My breath caught. There was the chair Leo had mentioned, a simple office chair, wheels and all. And sitting in it was a human skeleton, slumped forward slightly, one hand resting on what was unmistakably a smartphone on the armrest. The skeleton wore a dark jacket, jeans, sneakers that looked like they could have come from any department store. But that wasn't what made my hands go cold. Behind the skeleton was a wall of screens, dead screens, dark now, but clearly technological. Modern technology. Flat panels arranged in a grid pattern, maybe 20 in total. And beneath them was equipment, servers, cables, a keyboard on a desk. "That's impossible," I whispered. "That's what I said." Then I started dating the materials. Dr. Tennant pulled out another document covered in numbers and scientific terminology. The chamber walls are composed of a basalt variant that doesn't match any known lunar geology. Radiometric dating put the formation at 4.8 billion years old. Older than Earth, older than the Moon, older than anything in our solar system except the Sun itself. How can a chamber be older than the Moon it's inside? It can't. Not naturally, which means either the chamber was moved here or... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Or the Moon was built around it. The coffee tasted like ash in my mouth. That's insane. Yes, but the evidence doesn't care about sanity. He pulled out more photos. These showed close-ups of the symbols carved into the walls. I had a colleague, someone I trusted, run these through every database we have. Ancient languages, mathematical systems, astronomical notation. She found matches. Matches to what? Everything. Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mayan astronomical calendars, Sumerian cuneiform, ancient Chinese oracle bone script. But here's the thing. These weren't just similar, they were identical, exact replicas of symbols that wouldn't appear on Earth for millions of years after this chamber was supposedly built. My head was spinning. You're saying someone carved future human languages into lunar bedrock billions of years ago? Not someone, Dr. Tennant's voice dropped. Look at this photo, the one showing the floor around the skeleton." He slid another image across the table. It showed the area surrounding the chair in the chamber's center. The floor was smooth except for engravings, text carved directly into the stone in clean, straight lines. I could read it. It was in English. "The collection room," I read aloud. "Humanity's timeline samples. Extraction. Past. Present. Future. Observer species. Unknown. Status. Still watching." The apartment suddenly felt too small, too close. "Timeline samples," Dr. Tennant repeated. "That skeleton isn't from the past. It's from the future. Specifically, about 600 years from now, based on the smartphone model and degradation patterns." "That's impossible." "You keep saying that word." "I kept saying it too until I examined the other rooms." "Other rooms?" He pulled out a hand-drawn map, a rough sketch of the chamber system. The rescue team only explored the main chamber before they evacuated. But the initial seismic readings showed adjacent spaces, at least 12 separate rooms branching off from the central hub. I only got to see the data from 2 of them before NASA shut everything down. What was in them? Dr. Tennant's hands were shaking harder now. He lit a cigarette despite the no smoking sign visible through the window. Room 2 contained more skeletons. 37 in total, all human, all in various types of clothing spanning different eras. I documented everything before they pulled me out. Medieval armor, Victorian dresses, primitive animal skins, spacesuits that don't match any design currently in use. It's like someone was collecting humans across time, preserving them. Why? That's what I asked. Then I saw room 3. He stubbed out his cigarette half finished and pulled out the final photo. This one was darker, harder to make out details. It showed another chamber smaller than the main one. The walls were lined with what looked like glass cases, preservation chambers of some kind. Each one contained a body. Room 3 had 16 specimens, Dr. Tennant said quietly. But these weren't dead. The preservation systems were still active, life support functions at minimal levels. The people inside were in some kind of suspended animation. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, shattering on the linoleum floor. Neither of us moved to clean it. "You're telling me there are living people sealed in a chamber beneath the moon's surface, people from different time periods?" "Were living, past tense. When the drill breached the chamber, it disrupted the preservation systems. The life support units began failing. That's why NASA evacuated so quickly. They couldn't save them. Couldn't even try without admitting what they'd found." He pulled out one final document, a medical report with most of the text redacted. The 3 miners died from shock, but not because of what they saw. They died because their minds couldn't process it. Process what? Recognition. Your brother and the other 2, they got close enough to the preservation chambers to see the faces inside. And one of those faces was Tyler's. The room tilted. "What?" "Tyler Bridger, age 34, preserved in Chamber 6 in room 3, the same Tyler who was standing there looking at himself." Dr. Tennant's voice cracked. "How do you think a person's brain handles seeing their own corpse in a preservation unit that's billions of years old? The psychological trauma was so severe, their autonomic nervous systems just shut down. They literally died from the impossibility of it." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "That's why NASA buried this," Dr. Tennant continued. "Not because of the chamber or the impossible age or the collected specimens. They buried it because it proves something fundamental about our reality that we can't accept. Time isn't linear. Our timeline is being observed, manipulated, sampled by something we can't understand. And somehow, some way, human beings exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously." "Who's doing this?" The question came out hoarse. "Who's collecting people?" "The inscription says observer species, unknown. Status, still watching." He met my eyes. "Whatever they are, they're still out there, still observing. And they have Tyler, 2 versions of him. The one who died in February and the one preserved in that chamber. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" I don't know, but 3 days ago, something changed. He pulled up a news article on his laptop. NASA just announced they're reopening Sector 7 for exploratory mining. Says they've completed safety assessments and the area is clear for operations. They're going back down there. But you said they sealed it. Filled the drill shaft with concrete. They did, which means they're not going down to mine, they're going down to retrieve something. Or maybe. He closed the laptop. Maybe they're going to finish what got interrupted. The rescue team pulled your brother's body out, but the preserved version is still down there. And if whoever built that chamber is still watching, they know their collection got disturbed. Outside, a car door slammed. Dr. Tennant flinched at the sound, immediately moving to the window to check. His paranoia wasn't unfounded. People who knew too much kept having accidents. "You need to leave," he said. "Forget everything I told you. Go back to Tacoma and pretend this conversation never happened. They're watching anyone connected to this. Leo, me, you. Tyler tried to warn someone and he's dead. I tried to quit and they've made sure no institution will ever hire me again. This goes beyond your brother now. I can't just walk away." "Then you'll end up like him. Or worse, you'll end up like the specimens in those chambers. Preserved, collected, catalogued across time by something that sees us as curiosities." He handed me the folder of photographs. "Take these. Hide them somewhere safe. If something happens to me, at least someone will know the truth." I took the folder with numb fingers. Outside, another car pulled into the parking lot. Dr. Tennant saw it and his face went pale. "You need to go. Now." Back exit through the kitchen. "What about you?" "I'm already dead. I just haven't stopped moving yet." He practically pushed me toward the kitchen. "They're going back down to that chamber in 2 weeks. Whatever they're planning, it's bigger than both of us." I left through the back exit into an alley that smelled like garbage and rain. As I reached my rental car, I heard voices from Dr. Tennant's apartment. Professional, authoritative. I didn't look back, but I understood now what Tyler had seen in those final moments. Not just his own preserved corpse in a chamber that shouldn't exist. He'd seen proof that our entire timeline was just a collection, a sample taken by something vast and unknowable. And whatever was collecting us was still watching. I drove back to my hotel in a fog. The folder Dr. Tennant gave me sat on the passenger seat like something radioactive. Every few miles I'd glance at it. Tyler had seen himself dead, preserved, impossible. The hotel room was generic. Beige walls, scratchy comforter, view of the parking lot. I spread the photographs across the bed and tried to make sense of what I was looking at. The carved symbols, the preservation chambers, the skeleton with the smartphone. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Bridger." The voice was female, professional, with the kind of calm that came from saying difficult things for a living. "My name is Dr. Elizabeth Moss. I work for Helios Lunar Resources in Risk Assessment. We need to talk about your recent activities." "I don't know what you're talking about." "You met with Vincent Ruiz in Houston 4 days ago, Leo Hatch in a parking garage at Johnson Space Center 2 days ago. And this afternoon, you visited Dr. Malcolm Tennant in Albuquerque." She paused. "You've been asking questions about the February incident, questions that put you in considerable danger." I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. "Hanging up won't make this go away," Dr. Moss said when I answered. "And running won't help either. You're being monitored. Have been since you left Tacoma. But I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling because you need to know what's really happening before NASA goes back down in 13 days. Why would you tell me anything? Because I'm the one who recommended they reopen Sector 7. And now I think I made a terrible mistake." Her voice dropped. "Can you get to Santa Fe tonight? There's a diner on Cerrillos Road called the Sage Cafe, 2 a.m. Come alone or don't come at all." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the phone, weighing my options. This was obviously a trap. Helios knew what I'd been doing, who I'd talked to. They could make me disappear just like they'd done with the others. But if there was even a chance Dr. Moss was telling the truth, I had to know. I drove to Santa Fe. The Sage Cafe was one of those 24-hour places that catered to insomniacs and truckers. Half the lights were out, and only 2 other customers sat in booths near the back. Dr. Moss was waiting at a corner table, wearing civilian clothes, jeans and a leather jacket. She looked younger than her voice suggested, maybe late 30s, with sharp eyes that tracked me as I approached. "You came," she said. "I wasn't sure you would. You said you made a mistake." "What mistake?" She pushed a tablet across the table. On the screen was a document marked with corporate classifications. When we first discovered the chamber, Helios wanted to seal it permanently. Too many questions, too much risk. But I argued that we needed to understand it, study it. The technological implications alone could advance humanity by centuries. "So you convinced them to go back." "I convinced them there was value in retrieval. The preservation systems in room 3 were still partially functional when we evacuated. I theorized we could extract the specimens, study them in a controlled environment, maybe even revive some of them." She pulled up another file showing technical schematics. "I designed a containment protocol, special equipment to safely remove the preservation units without damaging the contents." "Without damaging the people, you mean?" "Samples. That's what the inscription calls them. Samples." She met my eyes. "But yes, people. Including your brother's duplicate, the preserved version." The coffee the waitress had poured sat untouched. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because 3 days ago something changed in the chamber. We have remote sensors monitoring the site, seismic activity, radiation levels, temperature fluctuations. They all spiked simultaneously at 0300 hours. And then we picked up a signal." "What kind of signal, Dai?" Dr. Moss pulled up a waveform on the tablet. It looked like audio data, rhythmic pulses that repeated in complex patterns. "This is broadcasting from inside the chamber. It started exactly when our sensors registered the changes. Our analysis team ran it through every decryption protocol we have. It's not random noise, it's structured, intentional." "Is it a distress signal?" "We don't know. But here's what worries me. The signal is getting stronger, more complex, like something's waking up." She zoomed in on the waveform, and 2 days ago, it changed again. Started incorporating human speech patterns, English language phonemes, like it's learning to communicate. The diner suddenly felt too exposed, too public. "What does it want?" "That's what NASA intends to find out. They're sending a team down in 13 days, bigger than the original rescue operation. Military personnel, containment specialists, xenolinguistics experts. They're going to establish direct communication with whatever's down there." She closed the tablet. "But I don't think that's wise." "Why not?" "Because of what happened to your brother and the others. They died from psychological shock. Their brains literally couldn't process what they saw. That suggests the chamber has some kind of defense mechanism, something that attacks the mind when you get too close to understanding what it really is." I thought about Tyler's last video message, the fear in his eyes. "You think it's protecting itself. I think it's protecting its collection. And when we breached the chamber, when we disrupted the preservation systems, we triggered something, a response, maybe an alarm." Dr. Moss leaned forward. "The inscription says observer species, still watching. What if they're not just watching? What if they're coming back?" The other customers were leaving. The waitress was wiping down tables on the far side of the restaurant. We were effectively alone. "Why are you really telling me this?" I asked. "You work for Helios. You're part of the cover-up." I was part of it, past tense, because yesterday I received a priority message from one of our lunar monitoring stations. They detected a gravimetric anomaly near the moon's surface, something massive entering lunar orbit from the far side. Something that wasn't there 6 hours earlier. She pulled out a printed image from her jacket. "This is what our telescopes captured." The photograph showed the moon's surface with a dark shape suspended above it, Not a ship, exactly. More like a structure. Geometric. Alien. Massive enough to cast a shadow across the crater below. That appeared 3 days ago, same time the signal started broadcasting. NASA classified it immediately, but a few of us kept copies. They're calling it an orbital debris field to explain it away. But I've seen debris. That's not debris. My hands were shaking. You're saying the observers are here? Or they never left? Maybe they've been waiting in lunar orbit all along, watching their collection. And now that we've found it, now that we've damaged it, they're responding. She took back the photograph. The mission in 13 days isn't about communication. It's about extraction. They want to remove the specimens before the observers take action. But I think that's exactly what will trigger a response. What kind of response? I don't know, but every simulation I've run suggests catastrophic outcomes. These things, whatever they are, they've been collecting humans across time, past, present, future. They have technology that makes ours look like stone tools. If we provoke them, if we try to take their samples, I don't think we survive the consequences. The waitress brought our check. We waited until she walked away. So, what do I do? I asked. What can I possibly do about any of this? Dr. Moss pulled out a key card and slid it across the table. Helios has a secure research facility in Los Alamos. They transported some materials from the chamber there for analysis. Rock samples, fragments of the preservation technology, documentation. This card will get you into the archive room. Everything they don't want public is stored there. Why would I need that? Because if NASA's mission fails, if the observers respond the way I think they will, someone needs to have proof of what happened. Someone outside the system, someone who can't be silenced. She stood to leave. Your brother died trying to warn people. Don't let his death be meaningless. She walked out before I could respond, leaving me with a keycard and 13 days until NASA's team descended into a chamber where something ancient was waking up, where Tyler's preserved corpse was waiting in a glass case, where observers from outside time were finally, after billions of years, coming back to check on their collection. I sat there until the diner closed at 4 a.m., turning the keycard over in my fingers. The waitress eventually asked me to leave, her voice gentle but firm. Outside, the New Mexico sky was clear and cold, stars scattered across the darkness like someone had spilled sugar on black cloth. Somewhere up there, past those stars, something massive hung in lunar orbit, watching, waiting. And in 13 days we were going to knock on its door. I had a choice to make. Walk away and let whatever happened happen. Or use the keycard Dr. Moss gave me and find proof that might mean something if everything went wrong. Tyler hadn't walked away. He'd tried to warn people and it cost him everything. I couldn't let that be for nothing. The Helios research facility in Los Alamos didn't look like much from the outside. Just another nondescript building in a tech park, surrounded by security fencing and cameras. The kind of place you'd drive past without a second thought. I waited until 3 a.m. to approach. Dr. Moss said the overnight security was minimal. Most of the protection was digital, not physical. The keycard would get me through the doors. After that, I was on my own. The card worked on the first try. The lock clicked open with a soft beep and I slipped inside. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from a corporate research facility. Sterile white hallways, fluorescent lighting, motivational posters about safety protocols. My footsteps echoed too loudly on the polished floors. Every shadow felt like it was hiding someone. The archive room was on the second floor, according to the directory near the elevator. I took the stairs instead, moving as quietly as possible. Each landing had a camera, but Dr. Moss said the keycard would register me as authorized personnel. My presence would show up in the logs, but not as an intruder. Unless she'd lied, unless this was all a trap. The second floor was darker than the first. Half the lights were off, giving everything a dim after-hours quality. I found the archive room at the end of a long corridor. Another keycard reader, another soft beep as the lock disengaged. Inside, the room was larger than I expected. Rows of filing cabinets, storage lockers, and computer terminals. One entire wall was covered in corkboard displaying photographs and documents connected by red string like something from a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Except this was real. I started with the corkboard. The photographs showed the chamber from every angle, wide shots of the carved walls, close-ups of the symbols, detailed images of the preservation units. In the center was a large photo of the skeleton in the office chair holding that impossible smartphone. But there were other photos too, ones I hadn't seen before. They showed the other specimens from room 3. Bodies in glass cases, preserved in perfect stasis. I recognized medieval clothing, Victorian-era dress, something that looked like ancient Roman armor. And there, in the bottom right corner, was a photograph of a preservation unit containing a man in a Helios mining suit. Tyler's suit, Tyler's face. My brother, preserved in glass, eyes closed like he was sleeping. The photograph was dated February 15th, 2045, one day after the mining accident. They'd photographed his preserved duplicate before evacuating the site. I stood there for I don't know how long, just staring at that image. 2 versions of my brother, one dead and buried in Bellingham, one frozen in time in a chamber beneath the moon, waiting for something. A sound behind me made me spin around. Dr. Moss stood in the doorway, but she wasn't alone. 2 security guards flanked her, both armed. Her expression was apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Nate. I really am." My heart hammered. "You set me up. I gave you a choice. You could have walked away." She stepped into the room and the guards stayed at the door. "But you're like your brother. Too curious, too determined to find the truth even when the truth will destroy you. Why? Why bring me here just to turn me in?" "Because I needed to see if you'd actually come. If you were committed enough to risk everything." She moved to one of the computer terminals and typed in a password. The screen illuminated her face in cold blue light. "And you are? Which means you're useful." "Useful for what?" "For stopping what's about to happen." She pulled up a file, classified beyond anything I'd seen before. "I told you NASA was planning an extraction mission in 13 days. What I didn't tell you was that I've been trying to cancel it for the past week. No one will listen. They think they can retrieve the specimens and study them safely. They're wrong." She pulled up a video file. The footage showed what looked like a command center, multiple screens, technicians at stations, people in suits discussing something. The timestamp said it was from yesterday. This is a simulation they ran, testing different extraction scenarios. Dr. Moss hit play. The video showed a 3D rendering of the lunar chamber. Digital figures representing the NASA team entering, approaching the preservation units, beginning the extraction process. Then the simulation showed something else, the chamber walls beginning to glow, the symbols lighting up in sequence, and then the entire chamber imploded. Not physically, something worse. The rendering showed space itself folding inward, dragging everything into a point of impossible darkness. The simulation crashed with an error message, gravitational cascade failure, reality breach detected. The team that built this simulation included theoretical physicists and quantum mechanics specialists, Dr. Moss said quietly. Their conclusion was unanimous. If we attempt to remove the specimens, the chamber's defense systems will activate. And those systems don't just destroy the immediate area. They create what they're calling a localized space-time collapse. A tear in reality centered on the collection site. What does that mean? It means the moon becomes uninhabitable, maybe worse. The cascade could spread, affect Earth's orbit, destabilize the gravitational balance of the entire inner solar system. She closed the simulation. But the mission is still going forward because the alternative is worse. What alternative? Dr. Moss pulled up another file. This one showed the alien structure in lunar orbit, the one from the photograph she'd shown me. But now there were more images, taken from different angles, tracked over several days. The structure was moving, descending toward the lunar surface. The observers are coming back for their collection. Our analysis suggests they'll reach the chamber in approximately 11 days. Once they're there, once they re-establish control over the site, we lose any chance of understanding what we've found. lose any chance of defending ourselves against something that can collect humans across time, like specimens in a museum. So NASA would rather destroy the moon than let them take back their samples. NASA would rather risk everything to obtain technology that makes us their equals, or at least gives us a fighting chance if they're hostile. She met my eyes. That's what this is really about. Not knowledge, not science, survival. Because if beings exist that can manipulate time itself, that can build chambers older than planets, that can observe and collect humanity across millennia, what does that make us? Ants in their terrarium, exhibits in their zoo. The security guards shifted uncomfortably at the door. Even they seemed disturbed by the implications. Why tell me any of this? I asked. Because you have something NASA doesn't. You have a personal connection to one of the specimens. Your brother's preserved duplicate is still down there, and according to our neural mapping analysis, preservation units don't just store bodies, they store consciousness, memory, experience. Tyler's duplicate isn't dead, he's suspended, waiting. My mouth went dry. You're saying Tyler is still alive down there? A version of him. The version collected from some point in his future timeline. We don't know when he was taken or how, but his neural patterns show activity. Limited, dormant, but present. She pulled up brain scans showing faint synaptic pulses. If we can extract him safely, if we can revive him, he might remember how he got there, where he came from, what the observers want. And if you can't extract him safely, then he dies along with everyone else on that mission when the chamber's defense systems activate. Dr. Moss closed all the files. But there's another option. One the official channels won't consider because it's too dangerous. What option? Someone could go down there before the mission, alone, without authorization, make direct contact with your brother's preservation unit and attempt a manual revival before the extraction team arrives. It would only take one person, someone motivated enough to risk everything. The room felt like it was closing in. You want me to go to the moon? I want you to save your brother. The version of him that's still alive. Because if those observers reach the chamber first, we'll never know what happened to him, never understand what we're facing. And if NASA's mission fails the way I think it will, Earth needs someone who's seen the truth firsthand, someone who can warn people about what's coming. One of the security guards cleared his throat. Dr. Moss, we're off schedule. The shift change is in 20 minutes. She nodded and turned back to me. There's a private transport leaving from White Sands in 8 days. Small crew, minimal oversight. I can get you on board as a contractor, someone doing equipment maintenance. Once you're on the moon, you'll have maybe 6 hours before the official mission arrives. 6 hours to reach the chamber, access Tyler's preservation unit, and attempt revival. This is insane. Yes, but you came here tonight knowing it might be a trap. You met with people who could have gotten you killed. You've risked everything already because you needed to know the truth. She pulled out a data stick and held it out. This contains everything. Access codes for the preservation systems, neural revival protocols, maps of the chamber complex, and one other thing. Tyler's final message. The complete version. Not the 15-second clip they released. The one where he explains what he saw down there. I took the data stick with numb fingers. You have 8 days to decide, Dr. Moss said. After that, the window closes. The observers arrive, NASA's team descends, and whatever happens next happens without any of us having a choice. The security guards escorted me out through a side exit. No alarms, no arrest. Just a quiet walk through the parking lot to my rental car as dawn began to break over the New Mexico desert. I sat in the driver's seat for an hour staring at the data stick. Tyler's complete final message was on there. The truth about what he'd seen, what he'd understood in those final moments before his mind broke from the impossibility of it all. And somewhere beneath 17 miles of lunar rock, another version of my brother was waiting in glass case, his consciousness preserved across time by beings who saw humanity as something to collect and catalogue and observe. I plugged the data stick into my laptop, Tyler's face appeared on the screen and he looked more afraid than I'd ever seen him. "Nate," he said, voice shaking. "If you're watching this, it means I'm dead, and they couldn't stop you from finding out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you got pulled into this. But you need to understand what we found down here. It's not just a chamber, it's not just specimens from different time periods. It's something worse." He glanced off camera at something I couldn't see. "The preservation units don't take people from the past or future. They take people from multiple timelines, parallel versions of reality. I saw myself in one of those cases, Nate, but it wasn't me, not exactly. He was wearing clothes I've never owned, had scars I've never gotten. He was me from a different timeline, a different Earth, and there are hundreds more like him, like all of us." Tyler's hands were shaking as he adjusted the camera. "The observers aren't collecting specimens. They're collecting variations, testing how humans develop across infinite timelines. And the reason the chamber is older than the moon, the reason it has symbols from languages that don't exist yet, it's because they exist outside of linear time completely. They can move between timelines, between moments, harvesting versions of us like we harvest data points." He leaned closer to the camera. "And Nate, the worst part? The collection isn't finished. It's ongoing, which means somewhere, in some timeline, there might be a version of you down here too. Waiting, preserved, observed." The video cut off. I sat in that parking lot as the sun rose and made a decision. 8 days. I had 8 days to reach the moon and wake up my brother before the observers came back for their collection. Before reality itself tore open beneath our feet. The transport shuttle from White Sands launched at 0400 hours on a Tuesday morning. I was listed on the manifest as Nathan Bridge, close enough to my real name that I'd respond naturally, different enough that it wouldn't flag in casual system searches. Maintenance contractor, equipment specialist, nobody important. The crew was small, pilot, co-pilot, 3 actual maintenance workers who ignored me completely, and a cargo bay full of replacement parts for the lunar mining equipment. The flight took 8 hours. Nobody talked much. Space travel had become routine enough that the novelty had worn off decades ago. I spent most of the trip staring out the window at Earth shrinking behind us, thinking about Tyler. When we were kids, he'd been obsessed with astronauts, had posters of the Apollo missions on his bedroom walls, built model rockets that never flew quite right but looked beautiful anyway. I remember him at 12 years old pointing up at the moon and saying he'd walk on it someday. He'd made it, and it killed him. The lunar base was bigger than I expected, a sprawling complex of connected modules and mining facilities spread across Tranquility Base. We docked at the main hub, went through decontamination, and were processed by a board administrator who barely looked at our credentials. "Maintenance crews report to sector assignments by 1800 hours, she said, handing us each a tablet with duty rosters. "Quarters are on level 3, mess hall on level 2. Don't wander into restricted areas or you'll get shot. Questions?" Nobody had questions. I found my assigned quarters, a coffin-sized sleeping pod with a locker and a small desk. The tablet Dr. Moss had given me was hidden in my bag, along with the access codes and neural revival protocols. I had maybe 5 hours before the official NASA extraction team arrived. 5 hours to reach Sector 7, find Tyler's preservation unit, and attempt something I barely understood. I was stowing my gear when someone knocked on the pod door. A young guy stood in the corridor, maybe 25, wearing a maintenance jumpsuit. Asian features, nervous eyes, ID badge that read Jimmy Park. "You're the new contractor," he said, not a question. "Yeah, problem?" "No, just... Nobody told me we were getting additional maintenance support in Sector 7. That's my assignment. I'm supposed to prep the drill equipment for the big NASA operation tomorrow." He shifted uncomfortably. "You really here for equipment maintenance?" I considered lying, but something about his expression told me he already knew the answer. Not exactly. Jimmy glanced down the corridor, then stepped inside my pod and closed the door. "Dr. Moss sent you. She told me someone might come, someone connected to Tyler Bridger." My pulse quickened. "How do you know her?" "I used to work at the Los Alamos facility. Lab assistant. I saw things I wasn't supposed to see. asked questions I wasn't supposed to ask, and Dr. Moss helped me transfer here before I got disappeared. He pulled out his own tablet. She's been trying to stop this extraction for weeks. Nobody will listen, so she's been recruiting people who might actually give a damn about what happens. Why do you care? Because 3 months ago, I went down into that chamber with a geological survey team. Not all the way to the bottom, just the upper access tunnels. And I saw something in the walls. Carvings that looked like instructions, warnings. He pulled up images on his tablet. These symbols repeat throughout the entire complex. I sent them to a linguistics professor I knew from college. She said they're similar to ancient warning markers, the kind used to mark dangerous sites for future civilizations. The symbols on his screen looked like the ones from the photographs. Spirals, angular shapes, deliberate patterns. What kind of warnings? Universal danger signs, the kind meant to communicate across language barriers, across time. Do not enter. Death lies within. Disturbance brings catastrophe. Jimmy's hands were shaking slightly. Whatever built that chamber, they tried to warn us. They marked it as forbidden, and we drilled right through it anyway. Can you get me down there? To Sector 7. That's why I'm here. The drill shaft that breached the chamber was filled with concrete, like you probably heard. But there's a secondary access tunnel, an old surveying route from before the collapse. It's technically off limits, but maintenance crews use it sometimes for equipment transport. I can get you in. Why would you risk this? Jimmy was quiet for a moment. Because my sister worked at the base last year. She was part of the initial rescue team, the one that went down and found the miners dead. She came back different, wouldn't talk about what she saw, started having nightmares. 2 weeks later, she requested transfer back to Earth and never contacted our family again, just vanished into witness protection or whatever Helios does with people who know too much. He met my eyes. If there's any chance of getting answers about what's really down there, I'm in. Besides, if Dr. Moss is right and tomorrow's mission triggers some kind of cascade failure, we're all dead anyway. Might as well die trying to stop it. The logic was sound, if depressing. When can we go? Shift change is in 2 hours. Night crew is always understaffed. We'll have maybe 4 hours before anyone notices we're gone. After that. He shrugged. After that, it doesn't matter because the NASA team arrives and everything goes to hell. I spent those 2 hours reviewing Dr. Moss's files. The neural revival protocols looked complicated but manageable. The preservation units operated on principles I barely understood, something about quantum stasis and temporal suspension. But the basic process was clear enough. Establish connection, initiate neural stimulus, monitor consciousness emergence, maintain stability through revival trauma. Revival trauma. Like waking up was the traumatic part, not being collected across timelines and stored in glass for billions of years. At 2200 hours, Jimmy came back. We took the service elevator down to the lowest level, then walked through a series of maintenance tunnels that got progressively older and less maintained. The walls changed from smooth manufactured panels to rough-cut lunar rock. Emergency lighting strips cast everything in sickly yellow. This section was part of the original base, Jimmy explained, before the expansion. These tunnels connect to the old mining operations. Nobody comes down here anymore. We reached a heavy blast door marked with warning signs and hazard tape. Jimmy used his maintenance override code. The door groaned open, releasing a breath of stale air that smelled like dust and something else. Something wrong. Beyond was darkness. Our helmet lights cut through it like knives, illuminating a tunnel that descended at a steep angle into the lunar crust. The chamber is about 2 miles down this route, Jimmy said. Maybe 45 minutes if we don't run into problems. We descended. The tunnel was silent except for our breathing and the soft crunch of boots on rock dust. Every few hundred meters we passed remnants of the old mining operation. Abandoned equipment, empty supply crates, sections where the walls had been reinforced with metal struts. Then Jimmy stopped abruptly. His light had caught something carved into the tunnel wall. The warning symbols. Hundreds of them covering a section of rock about 10 feet wide. The same spirals and angular shapes from the chamber below, repeated in dense patterns. "This wasn't here 3 months ago," Jimmy whispered. "I came through this tunnel. These carvings are new." "That's impossible. Nobody's been down here." "Exactly." We stood there, staring at symbols that shouldn't exist, that warned of danger in a language older than human civilization. And I realized something. The chamber wasn't just a collection site, it was alive somehow, active, and it knew we were coming. "We need to keep moving," I said. The tunnel continued downward. The air grew colder. Our suit systems registered temperature drops that didn't make sense this deep in the lunar crust. And then, about a mile down, we started hearing something. A sound, distant, rhythmic, like breathing. "Please tell me you hear that," Jimmy said. "I hear it." The breathing grew louder as we descended. Not mechanical, not wind through tunnel systems. Something organic, something massive. Each breath took maybe 30 seconds, a slow, patient inhalation and exhalation that seemed to come from the rock itself. We reached the final section of tunnel. Ahead, the passage opened into a larger space. Our lights couldn't penetrate the darkness beyond. "That's it," Jimmy said. "The chamber entrance." The drill breach is about 100 meters to the east, but this opening connects directly to the main collection room. The breathing sound was louder here, almost overwhelming, and beneath it, I heard something else. The signal Dr. Moss had mentioned, the one broadcasting from inside the chamber. But now it wasn't just random pulses. It was speaking, not English exactly, not any language I recognized, but somehow I understood it, like the meaning was bypassing language entirely and inserting itself directly into my consciousness. Waiting, watching, collecting, preserving, warning. "We shouldn't be here," Jimmy whispered. "I know." But I stepped forward anyway, into the darkness beyond the tunnel, into a space that had existed for billions of years, that had collected humans across infinite timelines, that was older than the moon and the earth and maybe reality itself. My helmet light illuminated carved walls covered in those symbols. The warnings, the instructions, the messages from beings who existed outside time. And at the center of the chamber I saw them, the preservation units, glass cases containing bodies from throughout human history and beyond, medieval knights, Victorian children, astronauts in suits from futures that hadn't happened yet. And there, third row from the left, case number 17, I saw Tyler, my brother, suspended in glass, eyes closed, wearing a Helios mining suit I'd never seen him in. A version of him collected from some other timeline, some parallel reality where events had unfolded differently. But his neural patterns were active, consciousness suspended, waiting to be awakened. I approached the preservation unit with Dr. Moss's access codes ready. Behind me, Jimmy was staring at the other cases, his face pale. "There are children in here," he whispered. "Kids. They took kids." I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. All I could do was stand in front of my brother's glass prison and prepare to do something that might save him or kill us both. The breathing sound filled the chamber. The signal continued broadcasting. And somewhere above us, the observers descended toward the moon, coming back to check on their collection. Coming back to find it disturbed. I placed my hand on the preservation unit's control panel and began the revival sequence. There was no turning back now. The revival sequence took 17 minutes. Neural stimulus at graduated intervals. Consciousness emergence monitored through readings I barely understood. The preservation unit's glass fogged as internal temperature adjusted. Systems dormant for billions of years started humming to life. Tyler's eyes snapped open at minute 14, completely aware, pupils contracting against my helmet light. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. "It's okay," I said through the glass. "I'm getting you out." Behind me, Jimmy monitored his tablet. The chamber's responding. Seismic activity spiking. Something's waking up. The breathing sound had gotten louder, faster. At minute 17, the preservation unit's seal released with a hiss. The glass panel slid open. Tyler collapsed forward and I caught him. He gasped, lungs filling with air for the first time in how long? His body convulsed as systems that had been paused restarted all at once. "Nate?" His voice was raw, confused. "How are you?" Where am I? You're in the chamber, beneath the moon. I came to get you out. Tyler's eyes focused, really seeing me for the first time. And the recognition that crossed his face wasn't relief. It was horror. No, you shouldn't be here. Neither should I. Not yet. Not for another. He grabbed my suit with surprising strength. What year is it? 2045 February. That's wrong. That's too early. I'm not supposed to be here until 2051. I remember. He looked around the chamber, at the other preservation units, at the carved walls. Oh God, they moved me. They adjusted the timeline. Who? The observers? Tyler laughed, but it sounded like a sob. The observers. That's what you're calling them. We didn't have a name for them in my time. We just called them the curators, because that's what they are. Not observers, curators, maintaining the collection across infinite variations. Jimmy appeared beside us. We need to move. The NASA team will be here in less than 2 hours, and something's happening to the chamber walls. He was right. The carved symbols were glowing now, faint bioluminescence spreading through the patterns like veins filling with light. The breathing sound had become rhythmic, synchronized with the pulsing glow. They know, Tyler whispered. The curators. They know someone accessed the collection without authorization. Can we get out before they respond? Out? Tyler looked at me like I'd said something absurd. Nate, there is no out. Don't you understand what this place is? What I tried to tell you in that message. You said the curators collect variations. Parallel versions of humans from different timelines. Not just humans, moments. They collect moments across infinite variations. Every choice that could be made, every possibility that could unfold, they sample it, store it, study it. Tyler pulled himself to his feet. I'm from a timeline where I didn't die in the February collapse, where I survived 6 more years, where I came back here voluntarily because we discovered something. What did you discover? That we're not the first species they've curated. There are chambers like this throughout the galaxy, each one containing samples from different civilizations. They've been doing this for billions of years, collecting, preserving, observing how consciousness develops. The glow from the symbols was getting brighter. Why? I asked. Because they're dying. Tyler moved toward the center of the chamber, a raised platform with equipment I couldn't identify. The curators exist outside linear time. They experience all moments simultaneously, but that existence has a cost. They're slowly fading from reality. He pressed his hand against the platform and it illuminated. Star charts. Something that looked like a map of space-time folding in impossible directions. They collect consciousness because they're trying to understand it, trying to replicate it. They want to die and be reborn as something that can exist linearly the way we do. That's insane. That's survival. And we're their template. Tyler pulled up more displays, but the curators made a mistake. They thought they were observing passively, but observation changed us. Every time they collected a specimen, they created a gravitational pull on that timeline, made certain outcomes more likely. What are you saying? I'm saying we shouldn't exist as a spacefaring species. Not this early, not this advanced. Natural human evolution would take another 1,000 years to reach the moon, let alone establish mining operations. But the curators' observations accelerated our development, pulled us forward, made us expand faster so they could collect more variations, more samples. Jimmy was backing away from the chamber walls. The glow had spread to cover almost every surface. We need to leave, right now. But Tyler shook his head. There's no leaving. Don't you feel it? The chamber is sealing. It does that when there's a containment breach, when someone accesses the collection without authorization. He looked at me with something like pity. We're samples now, Nate. The 3 of us. The moment we entered, the moment I was revived, we became part of the collection. This moment, this variation, this timeline where Tyler Bridges' brother came to the moon to save him. The breathing sound stopped. Everything stopped. The silence was worse than the sound. "They're here," Tyler whispered. The air in the chamber changed, became thicker, harder to move through. Reality itself seemed to slow down, like we were moving through glass. And then I saw them. Not beings exactly, more like absences. Spaces where reality folded back on itself. Shapes that existed in more dimensions than my eyes could process. The curators weren't creatures. They were discontinuities. Breaks in the fabric of space-time that had learned to think. One of them moved toward Tyler. I tried to step between them, but my body wouldn't respond. Time had stopped for me, but not for them. They existed outside the moment. The curator touched Tyler's forehead with something that wasn't quite a hand, and Tyler changed. His expression shifted from fear to understanding to something beyond emotion entirely. "I see it now," he said, voice distant. "All the timelines, all the variations, every version of myself that exists across infinite possibility. Every choice I made and didn't make. Every moment that led here and away from here. I'm all of them simultaneously." "Tyler, fight it!" "There's nothing to fight. They're not hostile, they're desperate. They're showing me what they want, what they need." His eyes met mine, but they were different now. Older, sadder. They want me to help them die, to show them how to transfer their consciousness into something linear. Something that can experience time the way we do. Birth, growth, death. A beginning and an end instead of eternal simultaneous existence. Another curator moved toward me. "No," Tyler said sharply, and somehow his voice had weight now. Authority. "Not him. He's not part of this bargain." The curator paused. "I'll help you," Tyler continued, speaking to the absences around us. "I'll let you study my consciousness. Let you map how humans experience sequential time. Let you use me as a template for your transformation. But in exchange, you let them go. My brother, Jimmy. Let them leave this chamber and never touch them again." The curators communicated without sound, without language, but I felt their response like pressure against my skull. Agreement. Terms. A bargain struck. "Tyler, no. I came here to save you. You did save me. This version of me. I get to choose what happens instead of just being a specimen, instead of being collected without consent. I'm giving them what they want because it means something. It means you get to live, get to warn people about what's coming. What is coming? Evolution. The curators won't need to collect humans anymore if they can become something like us. They'll release all the specimens, every version of every person from every timeline, send them back to their origin points. But the process will change things, shift timelines, merge possibilities. Reality is going to get weird for a while." The curator near me reached out, touched the preservation unit beside Tyler's. The glass shattered, and a woman in Victorian dress collapsed to the floor, gasping. Alive, freed. All around the chamber, preservation units were opening, bodies falling, voices crying out in confusion and terror. Hundreds of people from hundreds of timelines, all being released simultaneously. "They're letting everyone go," Tyler said, "ending the collection. But they need one volunteer, one consciousness willing to guide them through the transformation. One human who understands both linear and non-linear existence." "Let me do it. Let me stay instead." "You can't. You haven't experienced what I have, haven't seen yourself across timelines, haven't died and been preserved and revived. I'm already changed, already part of their collection. This is just making it official." Jimmy grabbed my arm. "The tunnel's opening. We can get out." Around us, people were running, stumbling toward exits that hadn't been there before. The chamber was releasing everyone, clearing the collection, preparing for something new. The curator touched Tyler again and his body began to change, not physically, something deeper. His presence became less solid, more distributed, like he was spreading across multiple points in space-time simultaneously. "Tell them what happened," Tyler said, his voice already fading. "Tell them the observers were never hostile, just dying, just trying to survive by becoming something else, something more like us. Tyler and Nate. In some timeline, in some variation, you made a different choice. You walked away. You forgot about all this and lived a normal life. But in this timeline, you came for me. You risked everything. His form was almost transparent now. I'm glad it was this version. This variation where my brother loved me enough to find me. Then he was gone, not dead, just distributed. Spread across infinite moments, merged with the curators, becoming the template they needed to transform themselves from eternal observers into mortal beings capable of experiencing time the way we do. The chamber began to collapse, not physically, but the structure that held it together was dissolving. The curators were leaving, taking Tyler with them, taking the collection itself and folding it back into space-time. Jimmy pulled me toward the tunnel. We ran with hundreds of other people, all of us stumbling through passages that shifted and changed as reality reasserted itself. Behind us, the chamber folded inward, disappeared, like it had never existed at all. We emerged into the mining tunnels and kept running, up, away, toward the surface. By the time we reached the base, the NASA extraction team had just arrived, but there was nothing left to extract. The chamber was gone. The preservation units were gone. The specimens were gone, sent back to their timelines, their origin points, their moments. All except Tyler. He'd stayed, volunteered, become something more than human so the rest of us could remain human, so the collection could end. 6 months after the chamber disappeared, I was back in Tacoma teaching 8th grade biology. NASA never acknowledged what happened. The official story was catastrophic geological instability in Sector 7. No mention of chambers, no mention of specimens, no mention of beings outside time or brothers who sacrificed themselves to end the collection. Dr. Moss vanished 3 days after. So did Dr. Tennant. Vincent Ruiz stopped returning my calls. Leo Hatch sent one text: "Forget everything." The people who knew the truth either disappeared or learned silence. Jimmy Park was the only one who stayed in touch, transferred to Earth operations in Houston. We met for coffee sometimes, never talking about what we saw, just sitting with the shared weight of knowing. But the world did know in a way they just didn't understand. Starting in March, people began appearing. Hundreds of them, scattered globally, with no memory of how they got there. A woman in Victorian dress in London, a medieval child in a German forest, an astronaut in an unrecognized suit materializing in Times Square. The news called it mass hysteria, elaborate pranks, but I knew. The specimens, the collected samples from infinite timelines, sent back to their origin points. Tyler's body, the original version, was still buried in Bellingham. I visited every few weeks with flowers that seemed inadequate for someone who'd saved humanity by becoming something more than human. The headstone just said Tyler Bridger, 2011 to 2045, beloved brother. It didn't mention the other version distributed across space-time, teaching dying gods mortality. The funeral had been small. Mum didn't come. She'd stopped speaking to us years ago. Just me, a handful of co-workers, and a company representative who handed me paperwork before the casket was lowered. Nobody knew I was burying only half the story. I tried explaining it once to my students during a lesson on evolution and extinction. How consciousness might be the universe's most valuable resource. How beings that lived forever might desperately want to learn how to die. How sacrifice could mean becoming something larger to save something smaller. They didn't understand. How could they? Sometimes late at night I'd go outside and look at the moon, and I'd swear something looked back. Not the curators. They were gone, transformed, learning what it meant to be born and grow old and die. Something else, something watching to see what humanity would do with its freedom now that we understood our place in a cosmos filled with dying civilizations and desperate observers. The moon looked different now, smaller, less permanent, like a shell with its contents scooped out, because I knew what had been hidden inside it, knew what had been taken away, knew that somewhere in the universe, other chambers existed, other collections. other species being studied and preserved by observers who might not be as willing to let go, and someday someone would find them too. Last week, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph of Tyler, the preserved version I'd revived. But in this photo, he wasn't in the preservation unit. He was standing outside the chamber, looking directly at the camera, wearing clothes I'd never seen. In his hand was a note. I haven't opened it yet. I'm not sure I want to know what a person distributed across space-time has to say to his brother who still experiences time linearly. But it's sitting on my desk, waiting. Just like the curators waited for billions of years. Just like something is still waiting out there beyond the moon, watching to see what we do next.